If our main trio of Sora, Donald, and Goofy were commanders, what would the deck look like? For the deck, I will solely be using cards from the Kingdom Hearts Commander Draft Cube, a project that I've been working on for quite a while now. Disclaimer, the Kingdom Hearts Commander Draft Cube is meant to be drafted, but I felt like brewing, so here we are. I'll be building a full 100 card Commander deck using cards only found in the cube. So if it's not in the cube, then it's not in the deck. So let's have a look at the commanders. First up, Sora Spirited Youth. What? Were you expecting Sora Heart of Light? Well, this deck is for KH1 Sora, and after I saw this amazing piece of artwork by Noah Sketches on Twitter, I had to make a version of Sora from KH1. He's 1 and a white for a 1/1 legendary creature wielder. He has Team Up, just like Donald and Goofy do, which lets all 3 of these cards be commanders together, since all 3 of them have Team Up. Think of it like Partner, but with 3 cards instead of 2. And that they all share a command attacks. So if you cast Sora first, then casting Donald would cost 5 instead of 3. He also has Chosen, so he can equip a single Keyblade. When he enters the battlefield, you may attach a Keyblade to him, then he explores. You don't have to equip the Keyblade to trigger the explore since it's a May ability, so Sora is definitely going on an adventure regardless of what happens. Explore, of course, reveal the top card of your library, put that card into your hand if it's a land, otherwise put a 1/1 counter on this creature, then put the card back on top or into your graveyard. Donald, Royal Magician, Commander number 2. He's 1, a red and a blue for a 1/4 legendary creature Duck Wizard. He has Team Up, which I explained earlier, and Prowess, so whenever you cast a non-creature spell, Donald will get +1/+1 until end of turn. You can also pay 2 and Is It Hybrid mana, either blue or red, to choose one of the following at random. Gain 4 life, like Cure, deal 3 damage to any target, like Thunder, or deal 1 damage to target creature and tap it, like Blizzard. It's random because he never does what you want him to do in game. Goofy, Royal Knight, our 3rd and final commander. Last and possibly least, he's 2 and a green for a 2/3 legendary creature Dog Knight. He's also got Team Up and an ability that makes any damage dealt to you or creatures you control redirect to Goofy himself. He will always have your back, truly the best party member in any game. So these are our 3, and there's a theme that I think will work really well here. Cheap artifacts, specifically Keyblades. Sora cares about the Keyblades and can get a lot bigger with them. And Donald's Prowess, he can also get a lot bigger if we cast a lot of cheap Keyblades. Remember, Prowess triggers with non-creature spells, not just instants and sorceries. Goofy offers some protection, but is definitely more of a support for the strategy. So the plan is simple. Get artifacts and Keyblades out to power up Sora and Donald, and let Goofy support. Kinda how he does in the novels, actually. With that in mind, let's get to the list. First up, let's talk about ramp. And we'll start with artifact ramp with World Map, a 1-mana artifact with pay 1 to tap and sacrifice it, search your library for a land card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle. Or 2 and tap and sack it to search your library for a land card and put it onto the battlefield. Great turn 1 start, but also pretty good for triggering Prowess later. Plus it's land, which is really, really good because this deck is quite color intensive. Next we have Lucky Emblem and the Nobody Emblem. Both cost 2, tap 4, in Lucky Emblem's case, blue, red or green, and in Nobody Emblem's case, blue, red and white. And you can tap them and sacrifice them to each draw a card. Great that it's cheap, great that it's color, and the card draw is nice later. Lastly, for the artifact ramp, we've got a complete flavor win in Kairi's Lucky Charm, a legendary artifact with no cost. And during your turn, you may reveal Kairi's Lucky Charm from your hand. If you do, put it onto the battlefield under target opponent's control. And then that player may pay 3 and tap it, so you and Kairi's Lucky Charm's, oh my word, owner may search their library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Next up, we will take a look at useful Keyblades for ramp, and we'll start with Dive Wing, which is a 2-mana artifact equipment Keyblade. With equipped Chosen 1, an equipped creature gets +1/+1, and whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to an opponent, search your library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Treasure Trove is next and costs a little bit more at 3 mana. With equipped Chosen 2, an equipped creature gets +1/+1, and whenever it attacks, create a treasure token. That treasure token is going to be useful for synergies later, but it's also ramp and a consistent source of ramp at that. Thirdly and finally, with the Keyblades for ramp, we have Circle of Life, another 3-mana Keyblade with equipped Chosen 2. An equipped creature gets +2/+2 and can tap to add 2 mana in any combination of colors to your mana pool. This literally turns Sora into a mana dork, and I love it. Thanks to Goofy, we also have green in this deck, So we can take a look at World card, which is a 1 and a green for a sorcery with Entwine, 1 and a green. And of course, Entwine, choose both if you pay the Entwine cost. You can either search your library for a basic land card and put it into play tapped, or put a land card from your hand into play. In the best case, it's 4 mana, 2 lands, and in worst case, it's 2 mana for a land. Why not? Since we were blessed with the Selfie Cam in Kingdom Hearts 3, we are also running Selfie Preservation, which is a reprint from Unstable? Yeah, it's more 2 mana ramp, which is great. We just have to make sure there are trees. Hope for Radiant Garden is another green ramp spell that's a little more expensive at 3 and a green for a sorcery. And then for each opponent that controls more creatures than you do, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. This is really easy to trigger since we're not very creature heavy. We've got a few extras other than our commanders in the deck, but not too many. And then our final card in the ramp package is a red card. Summer Jobs is 1 and a red for an enchantment saga. The first stage, target creature gains trample and haste until end of turn, create a treasure token. The second stage, each opponent creates a 0/2 junk creature token with defender, and then create a treasure token. And the third set, target opponent creates a 2/4 cargo creature token with defender, create a treasure token. Of course, each of these modes represent a different job you can do in Twilight Town in Kingdom Hearts 2. The first being letter delivery, the second being junk cleaning, and the third being luggage transfer. Now that we're done with ramp, let's talk about drawing cards, and we'll start with Keyblades. Firstly, we'll talk about an old bordered card with Envy's Keyblade, which is a 2 mana artifact equipment Keyblade with equip chosen 5 and Will of the Council. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Envy's Keyblade is equipped, starting with you, each player votes for information or action. If information gets more votes, each player draws cards until they have 5, and if action gets more votes or the vote is tied, each player puts all their commanders from the command zone onto the battlefield. So this is a pretty expensive effect, but it could be good for card draw, or it could also get all 3 of our commanders out onto the field all at once, which is definitely not a bad thing, especially since team-up creatures share a command attacks. So a swing like this, consistently, really strong. Secondly, we've got a cheaper Keyblade with Stroke of Midnight, which is a 1 blue for an artifact equipment Keyblade with equip chosen 2. And whenever an equipped creature attacks or blocks, put an hour counter on Stroke of Midnight. And when the 12th hour counter is put on Stroke of Midnight, shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library, then draw 7 cards. This is very heavily templated off Midnight Clock from Throne of Eldraine, but instead of being a mana rock artifact, it's a Keyblade. A card like this takes a lot of time to get going, but it's a cheap artifact to use to trigger prowess and can draw a ton of cards later in the game. And the final Keyblade in the card draw category is Twilight Blaze, a 1, a red, and a white for an artifact equipment Keyblade with equip chosen 1. While Twilight Blaze is equipped, whenever a creature you control blocks or fights, draw a card and gain a life. We know we want to be swinging in this deck, so this is a perfect include. Alright, let's talk about our creatures that can help us draw cards, and we'll start with Rhyme, Lost in the Game. She's 1 white for a legendary creature human player, and she has partner with Beat, and when this creature enters the battlefield, target player may put Beat into their hand from their library, then shuffle. Beat is actually a black creature, and since this deck has no black, we will not have Beat in this deck. But she has a brilliant ability to tap 2 untapped artifacts you control to draw a card. This deck is all about artifacts, and if we're making treasure for additional ramp, we can also tap those for cards. Rhyme gets really stupid if we can get her down on a good board. You could very easily draw at least 1 card per turn, if not more per turn, with Rhyme on the field. So she's an excellent creature. Let's keep her in here. And as creatures go, we've got a slightly bigger guy this time. We've got Brain from Union Cross. And Brain is 3 and a white for a legendary creature leader, as in Union leader. And he's a 3/3. He has Chosen, and you may look at the top card of any player's library at any time. But the important ability is whenever Brain becomes untapped, you may draw a card. We've got a few reprints of cards now with Opt, Brainstorm, Stroke of Genius, and Harmonize. We all know what these cards do, but they're brilliant draw spells. 2 of them are 1 mana, so that's even better. And they give us immediate cards when you need them. And finally, we will end on one of Sora's signature abilities, Ragnarok, which is 2 and 3 white pips. Very restricted mana cost for a sorcery. And this card says, if you have less than 5 cards in your hand, draw cards equal to the distance. difference. Then deal X damage divided as you choose among up to X targets, where X is the number of cards in your hand. This is expensive, but it could refill our hands late game and deal 5 damage to a load of things and blow up some stuff to help Sora and Donald smack face. This is a super splashy draw spell that's also kind of removal-y, and come on, massive flavor win, it's gotta be in here. Alright, let's talk removal. And I'm specifically talking about non-creature spells for removal in this section. So we'll start with Strike Raid, which is 1 white for an instant with lifelink. And as you cast this spell, you may unattach an equipment from target creature you control. If you do copy this spell, you may choose new targets for the copy, which is awesome. We can trigger that super easily. But it also says deal 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. 1 mana, 2 things, 8 life. Sign me up, that's a flipping awesome rate. Plus, it's great for triggering prowess because it's only 1 mana. Next, we'll go for a spell introduced in Kingdom Hearts 3 with Water, which is 1 blue for an instant and says choose 1. Either return target creature to its owner's hand or counter target instant or sorcery spell. It doesn't get rid of a threat permanently, but it does take out a blocker if need be, and it doubles as a cheap counter spell if we need it. Reality Shift, an existing card, is also in the cube, so of course it had to be in here as well. And finally we have Settle This. Damn, we are all about the 1 mana removal spells. I didn't even realize. Settle This is 1 green for a sorcery that says put 2 1/1 counters on target creature you control if it's white, then it fights target creature you don't control. This can turn Sora into a 3/3 and then make him destroy something. Alright, let's talk splashy removal. Let's talk about Explosion. 2 and 2 white for a sorcery which says tap target legendary creature you control and it deals damage equal to its power to up to 1 target creature controlled by each opponent, and you gain that much life. We have quite a lot of opportunities to get Sora really big in this deck. Donald as well, actually. So we could easily gain a ton of life off of this and get rid of 3 problematic creatures. Sounds perfect. And rounding out the removal, we have Ars Arcanum, which is 1 and 3 red for a sorcery that says target creature you control gains triple strike and indestructible until end of turn. It fights target creature you don't control. I can't read this with a straight face, it's ridiculous. It's got a really restrictive cost, but if you can pay it, you can turn Sora into an absolute machine to take out something massive. And then if that's the only blocker, you get to swing in with a triple striking Sora. I mean, this thing is just fun. I love it. Well, I said we weren't a particularly creature heavy deck, so we got 4 board wipes in this deck that can help to wipe away a completely insurmountable army. And we will start with Wingblade Style. Wingblade Style is 3, a red and a white, for an enchantment aura with flash and enchant creature. There's a lot of text on this. At the beginning of your next upkeep, sacrifice Wingblade Style. That sucks. Enchanted creature gains chosen and can equip 6 Keyblades. That doesn't suck. And to top it all off, when Wingblade Style is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, destroy all creatures your opponents control and unattach all Keyblades from all creatures you control. Next up, we've actually got Kairi's Shotlock from Kingdom Hearts 3 with Heart of a Princess, which is 3 and 2 white for a sorcery that simply says destroy all creatures and enchantments. You gain 1 life for each permanent destroyed this way. Get rid of loads of things, gain loads of life. This also, importantly, doesn't hit artifacts. And since this deck is very artifact heavy, seems important. Thirdly, we've got another reprint with Crush of Tentacles. We all know what this thing does. This allows us to recast all of our cheap artifacts, and if we get the surge cost, which is very easy to trigger, then we get a giant Ursula. Why not? But we're not here to talk about tentacles, we're here to talk about Donald. So... The final board wipe is Zetta-flare, which is 3, 2 blue and 2 red for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a legendary creature. If you are a flavor god, you will sacrifice Donald's. And it states, destroy all creatures your opponents control, then each opponent loses life equal to the number of creatures they controlled that were destroyed by this effect. Not only do we get to blow up our opponent's entire boards and not touch ours, but we also get to hit their life totals as well. And since this deck cares about swinging, dropping that life total is definitely the way we're going to win. Plus, come on, Donald is the commander. He should have his best spell. All right, now that we've covered the basics, let's go into those chosen. Let's start with Ventus the Impulsive, who is a single Boros hybrid mana, so either red or white, for a 1/1 legendary creature wielder. He has team up, not that it matters, along with haste and Chosen. He just comes down early and swings. He's a good aggressive creature. This deck cares about swinging and it cares about Keyblades, so Ventus is a pretty solid include at this point. Next up we have the Uncertain Strelitzia, who is 1 and 2 white for a legendary creature wielder, and she's also a 1/1. Comes down a little slower than Ventus, but she has Chosen and Exalted, so whenever a creature you control attacks alone, that creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. And whenever Strelitzia attacks alone, put a 1/1 counter on her and she gains lifelink until end of turn. This card can be really devastating if your opponents leave it alone. If you get blown out and you have a Keyblade on board with this girl, you can very easily start to gain back some life and get yourself back into the game. Next up, because of course Ventus needs someone to look after him, we have Master Eraqus, who is 3 and a white for a 3/4 legendary creature master. He of course has Chosen along with Mentor, and whenever this creature attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature with lesser power. Whenever this guy swings, he can make either Sora or Donald just a little bit bigger. And since it's counters rather than temporary 1/1, it's just a little bit better. In a deck that cares about swinging, this is a pretty good mid-range creature. Finally rounding out those Chosen, we have Axel, rank 8. 2 and 2 red for a legendary creature, nobody in fact. He's a 5/3 who also has Team Up and Chosen of course, but he's got a Desperation move. The first time Axel takes damage each turn, each opponent gets an emblem with, at the beginning of each upkeep. This emblem deals 2 damage to you. This damage can't reduce your life total lower than 1, and you can pay 3 to destroy this emblem. This, I think, represents perfectly the flaming flaw that Data Axel pulls out that drops your life total when you're trying to face him as Sora. But he's got power, he's got Chosen, and the ability to deal very consistent burn damage from him is really, really good, I've just got to say. Our next category is those doing the choosing, and of course, this is just all Keyblades. So let's start off with a real flavor win. The Kingdom Key. 2 mana for an artifact equipment Keyblade with equip Chosen 0, and equipped creature gains +1/+1, and whenever a source deals damage to it, prevent 2 of that damage. It's cheap, it's free to equip, and it defends our creatures a little bit from damage. It's not bad. I mean, it's not great, but it's in for flavor. Like, come on. Speaking of cheap Keyblades that come in easy, we have Ocean's Rage, which is a single blue for an artifact equipment Keyblade with equip Chosen 1 and a blue. The equipped creature gains +1/+2, and while Ocean's Rage is equipped, whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you may remove a counter from target permanent. It comes down cheap, great for prowess, but it could also maybe disrupt a planeswalker or 2, or throw a small spanner in some works of counter strategies. Now let's talk about a couple Keyblades that can help get stuff back from the grave with Flame Liberator and Lost Memory. Flame Liberator is 2 red for an artifact equipment Keyblade with equip Chosen 4, and whenever equipped creature deals Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage to an opponent, you may return a creature card at random from your graveyard to your hand. Lost Memory, on the other hand, is 1 for an artifact equipment Keyblade with equip Chosen 2, and whenever equipped creature attacks, return a random card from your graveyard to your hand. Both of these come down pretty cheap, to be honest, and can help to get cards out of your graveyard. The Lost Memory is better than Flame Liberator in this case though, because as I've previously stated, we don't have as many creatures. Next up, we've got Ventus, so we might as well also have Wayward Wind, which is 2 for an artifact equipment Keyblade with equip Chosen 1, and equipped creature gains +1/+1, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to an opponent, it explores. Ventus is obviously known for running off in Birth by Sleep and starting half of the problems, but the Keyblade itself makes a lot of sense. It gives Sora the ability to explore multiple times rather than just when he enters, which can help to power him up or help to fix our mana, both of which are pretty strong. I just realized how flavorful all of these Keyblades are, because we now have the Master's Defender, Master Eraqus' Keyblade, which is 1 and a white for an artifact equipment Keyblade with equip Chosen 2. Equipped creature gains +2/+2 and is a master in addition to its other types. And whenever equipped creature attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control with lesser power. It's like Mentor, but way better. We have quite a lot of low to the ground creatures, so if we can get this on somebody like Sora and start swinging in, then yeah, power's going up for sure. Next, we've got 2 Keyblades that are all about power, with Decisive Pumpkin and Fenrir. The Decisive Pumpkin is 4 for an artifact equipment Keyblade with equip Chosen 6, and the equipped creature gains +6 +2 and Last Strike. Last Strike, of course, an ability introduced in Unstable. Does somebody fact check me on that one? But it is the opposite of First Strike. It makes your damage always happen last. And to the right of it, we have Fenrir, which is 5 for an artifact equipment Keyblade with equip chosen 2. The equipped creature gains +7/+1, and whenever a equipped creature attacks, exert it. And of course, an exerted permanent won't untap during your next untap step. Both of these are here to essentially skyrocket Sora's power so that when he swings hard. And speaking of swinging hard, we've also got Fatal Crest, which is 2 for an artifact equipment Keyblade with equip chosen 3 and a red. And whenever a equipped creature attacks for the first time each turn, untap it at the end of combat. After this combat step, there is an additional combat step. What's better than swinging with a massive creature? Being able to swing with a massive creature again. The only downside is, of course, we need to find some way of giving Sora 2 Keyblades in order to really maximize damage with this. See what I did there? I'm foreshadowing a later section of the deck tech. Next up, we've got one half of the pair with the Oath Keeper, which is 1 and a white for an artifact equipment Keyblade with equip chosen 2. And equipped creature gets +1/+3, and whenever it blocks, gain life equal to the attacking creature's toughness. The extra life gain on block can be very, very helpful if we're in a bind. And finally, I want to talk about a Keyblade that isn't actually a Keyblade at all, because it's the wooden Keyblade from Birth by Sleep, which is a 0-cost artifact equipment Keyblade? With equip 0. And the equipped creature gains 2, sacrifice the wooden Keyblade, put a chosen counter on this creature. Naturally, this is meant to represent the evolution of Ventus from swinging around a wooden sword to being a full-blown Keyblade wielder, but in this deck, it also might give Donald or even Goofy the ability to wield the Kingdom Key. What a terrifying thought. Speaking of the foreshadowing, now let's go into a small but genuinely amazing section, and that's the drive forms. So let's start with Valor form, which is 1 and a red for an enchantment aura that says enchant creature. An enchanted creature can't block and gets chosen, double strike, and can equip 2 Keyblades. There you go. That's exactly what we needed. We need to put Fenrir and we need to put Fatal Crest on a Valor form Kingdom Hearts 1 Sora, and we need to start shredding people. That is exactly what Valor form lets you do. Next up, we have Wisdom form, which is 1 and a white for an enchantment aura with enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1, first strike, and chosen. So this one doesn't allow us to equip 2 Keyblades, but it does give us first strike, which can help to get rid of blockers and protect our Sora. But you'll notice that Valor form and Wisdom form, and to be fair, all drive forms do this, but they all grant chosen. So that means any creature that we put in the deck has the possibility of being able to equip a Keyblade. Donald, Goofy, even Pence. Next up, we've got Limit form, which is a little bit more expensive at 1 a red and 2 white for an enchantment aura enchant creature. Enchanted creature gains chosen, lifelink, and 4 and tap. This creature deals damage equal to its power to any target, kind of representing the limits that you can get in limit form. This can do a massive amount of damage to a single opponent, and again, lifelink. We get all of that back in life. Next up, we've got 3 more forms for double Keyblades with Master form, Final form, and technically not a drive form from Kingdom Hearts 2, but we're going to count it anyway with double form. Master form is 2 a red and a white for an enchantment or enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and gains double strike, chosen, and can equip 2 Keyblades. It's basically Valor form just without the downsides. Then there's Final form, which is 2 and 2 white for an enchantment or enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3, flying, first strike, chosen, and can equip 2 Keyblades. Well, now it's bigger Master form. And then of the 3, we have double form, which is 1 a red and a white for an enchantment aura enchant creature. Enchanted creature gains chosen, can equip 2 Keyblades, and a desperation move, which states the first time enchanted creature takes damage each turn, you may unequip all equipment attached to it. Enchanted creature deals 4 damage to any target for each equipment unattached. Wow, that's a lot of text, but if you've been eagle-eyed, you may notice that this is actually the same desperation move that Roxas has. And since double form is a representation of the power of Roxas, then it kind of made sense that this basically turns any creature we want to into a Roxas. Now let's talk about utility cards, and we're going to start off with some supportive creatures. So we'll start with
Painter, Pence, Olette.
Haina is a red and a white for a legendary creature human struggler, with creatures you control that are equipped with a Keyblade have vigilance. Pence is also a red and a white for a legendary creature creature human, and creatures you control that are equipped with a Keyblade have Prowess. And finally, Olette is a red and a white for a legendary creature human, with creatures you control that are equipped with a Keyblade have Lifelink. This trio is kind of obvious. They're here to support all of our creatures that will have all of the Keyblades. And to round off support creatures, we've actually got a much bigger one, also kind of from Twilight Town, and that's Xion Final Form. Final Form Xion is 4, a blue, a red, and a white for a 7/9 creature replica. She's got Reach, Vigilance, Lifelink, and a Desperation move that says the first time Xion Final Form takes damage each turn, she deals 1 damage to any number of target creatures. She also has the ability of whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, return a non-creature spell from your graveyard to your hand. Not only is she literally massive, she can bring back all of our non-creature spells that have either been sent to the graveyard by board wipes or whatever, or sorceries and instants and other things we've played. And since we're not very creature heavy, this deck really struggles against token strategies. So her Desperation move is going to be brilliant to get rid of all of the heartless 1/1s with Pure Blood to really take down the Devotion decks a peg or two. And the final cards are all about Commander Protection. Our deck is pretty heavy on making sure our commanders stick on the board, so we've got a few cards here to make sure that they do so. Starting off with Protectga, which is 1 and a white for an enchantment aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gains +0/+2 and hexproof. If this enchantment is good enough for baby Kairi, then it's good enough for us. Next up we got Stormfall, still not done with Keyblades, which is 3 for an artifact equipment Keyblade with equipped chosen 2. An equipped creature gains +1/+3 and ward 3. Ward is pretty solid protection from single target removal, so a great include here. Next up, a creature that can help protect all of our creatures is Tinkerbell, who is 1 and 2 green for a legendary enchantment creature Fairy. She's got summon 2 because, yep, she's a summon, which means that this creature enters the battlefield with 2 time counters on it, and at the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter from it, and when the last one is removed, you return it to your hand. It's like a temporary creature. You only bring them out for a short amount of time, right? But Tinkerbell's ability is when a legendary creature you control dies, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So our commanders are not going to stay dead for very long. And then finally, the last card to help protect our commanders is actually Zigbar's Escape, which is 3 and a white for an instant, which states the next time a creature you control would leave the battlefield, instead exile it. Return it to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. Just make sure that our commanders can stick around on the board and we don't have to cast them from the command zone again. The second to last category is probably the one that we should care about the most, and that's the win cons of the deck, other than obviously giant Sora swinging in for massive damage. We'll start off with another form that isn't actually a form, and that's Ultimate Form, which is 3 and 2 white for an enchantment aura enchant creature. The enchanted creature gains first strike, and whenever enchanted creature attacks, it deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. One of the big problems with big swingy aggro decks is you can only really swing at one opponent if you've got one big creature. This lets you swing at everyone at once. Another card in a similar vein to Ultimate Form is Axel's Ignition, which is 3 red for a sorcery. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each other creature and each opponent. Then sacrifice that creature. It's a shame that we lose our creature for casting this, but we've got a lot of lifelink synergies. So give a big Donald lifelink and set him off to explode. We're going to gain a ton of life from that. This will trigger Prowess itself. It's all just a massive pile of explosions and life gain. Why the hell not? Next up, it's an oldie but a goodie. It's a reprint. It's Fling. Yep, Fling is in the cube because Kerchak throws Sora into the waterfall cavern. But in this deck, if we can get a creature big enough, then throwing it at our opponents is definitely the right way to go. But our final win condition is actually more focused on the life gain side of things than having a giant creature to throw at our opponents, and that's Ultimate Cannon, an 8 mana sorcery that says as an additional cost to cast this spell, pay 50 life, and then deal 50 damage to each opponent. It's Aetherflux Reservoir on a sorcery that hits everyone all at once. We've got quite a lot of ways of gaining life, so if we can pull this off, then I think the Lingering Will would be proud. Alright, so now that we've talked about the spells, now we need to talk about the mana. We're running 32 lands in this deck, and we're going to start off with the Oceans Between, which is a legendary land that enters the battlefield tapped, taps for colorless, and you can pay 2 to tap and sacrifice it to search your library for up to 2 land cards, put one of them into your hand and the other into the battlefield tapped. Next up, we've got a couple more legendary lands with the Secret Forest and the Secret Forge. The Secret Forest taps for white and says Keyblades you control have equipped chosen 0, and you can pay 1 and a white and tap it to put a chosen counter on target legendary creature. The Secret Forge, on the other hand, when it enters the battlefield, you may pay 2, and if you do, search your library for an artifact that costs 2 or less, reveal it, and put it on top of your library. And of course it taps for a red. Then we've got 4 lands, 1 for each of our colors, which are all cycle lands in Agrabah, Arendelle, Wonderland, and Disney Town. These just enter the battlefield and tap for either a red, a blue, a green, or a white, and they have cycling for 1 if we don't need the land. And then finally we have Rogue's Passage, which taps for a colorless, and of course pay 4 and tap. Target creature can't be blocked this turn. As Pete says, open sesames. Next up, we've got our multicolored lands, starting off with Dive to the Heart, which is a legendary land that taps to add 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identities, an auto include in this deck. Next up, we've got 6 lands that each tap for 1 of 2 colors, enter the battlefield tapped, and when they do enter, we can scry 1 with the 100 Acre Wood, Atlantica, Kingdom of Corona, the Land of Dragons, Toy Box, and Twilight Town. Then we've got 6 lands, each of which tapping for 2 mana of colors that we need, in Country of the Musketeers, Deep Jungle, Dwarf Woodlands, Olympus Coliseum, Pride Lands, and San Francisco. These all enter the battlefield tapped, and when they do enter, you have to return a land you control to your hand. And rounding off the multicolored lands, we have Disney Castle and the World That Never Was. Disney Castle, when it enters the battlefield, you may reveal a creature with adventure from your hand. If you don't, Disney Castle enters the battlefield tapped. The World That Never Was is the same, but instead of a creature with adventure, it's a creature with a desperation move. Even if these enter tapped, they're tri-lands, which is just great fixing. And we will round off the mana base with 3 plains, 2 islands, 2 mountains, and 2 forests. And that's it. So what do you think of the deck? What did you think of the cards that were showed off here? Do you want to hear more about them? Did you notice any problems with the cards? And if you did, hit me up in the comments down below. Obviously the cube is still in development, so we are fixing issues that get found. But please do leave feedback on the deck in the comments down below. I'd really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much for your time, guys, and I hope you have a wonderful day.